Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they will inherit the kingdom of heaven. It's theirs for the taking. We're talking about the upside down kingdom, and when I start fixating on something, thinking about a concept, I just feel like I see it all around me all the time. This happened for me a few weeks ago. We thank you to your New Life generosity. Our church family was able to invest in a focused time of investment to grow up, build up, encourage up, and to send out a whole bunch of church planters. That happened here, about a month ago. We had 12 church plants representing new churches, new life, if you will, all over our country. I had so much fun connecting with those church planters. Actually, they're my heroes. What they do, it's incredible, the time, talent, and investment that it takes to pull off. Church planting is not for sissies, and it was so encouraging to spend time with them and hear their creative ideas and hopefully to get to pour into them as they go out to serve. So this is what we're doing for several days in a row. It happened right down the hallway here. One of those days, I was there early in the morning. My task that morning was to encourage them with a devotional thought. I brought my A game. I was ready to bring it that morning. We had kind of a fun moment of levity before that happened, though. They were feeling their oats a little bit. I think we'd played the night before at Top Golf, and people had gotten to know each other. There was some good community camaraderie happening. One of the planters, his name is Ashish. He's planting an incredible church in Yonkers, just north of Manhattan, New York City. Actually, he was telling me around dinner one night that he grew up right down the road from, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. You know this guy? That area of the world, my goodness, poor in spirit, poor, they're not through a financial lens, which offers all kinds of opportunities and challenges to planting a church there, to serving, to growing God's kingdom there, similar to the way there are some challengers here in Hamilton County. We were connecting on that idea. Well, this morning in particular, he's feeling his oats, and he challenges one of the pros that was there to help encourage them. His name is Tim. Tim lives in Southern California. Tim is, mid-60s, built like a tank. I happen to know he was an all-American wrestler. Let me take that up a notch. He grew up in Iowa. When you say you're all-American wrestler in Indiana, that's one thing, but Iowa, come on. And he's fit. He's stayed fit. Well, Ashish had heard that he wrestled, and he challenges him to a wrestling match right there in the middle of room 123, and I'm thinking to myself, oh boy, he has no idea what's getting ready to happen to him. I'm thinking this is New York versus Southern California. It's like Tupac and Biggie all over again. We got East Coast, West Coast getting ready to throw down. And for my money, Tim is going to win this matchup. I flashed back in that moment to a moment when I was in high school, when I learned the hard way, you don't mess with the wrestlers. The hard way. I wouldn't have used this language then, but we talk about one life. Are you investing in one life? Is there somebody that you know they're not walking with Jesus currently today yet? Well, for me, his name at that point in my life was Eric Vicenzi. He was a wrestler. He was a couple years older than me. I thought he was pretty cool. I had been inviting him to join our youth group. We had our version of Momentum. Typically at 11 o'clock, that crowd sits over here. I had been inviting him, and this night he joined, and I thought, how cool is this? And he said something about a wrestling match, and I said, put me on, coach, I'm ready to play. And in about, 10 seconds, he tied me up into a human pretzel. I cried, Uncle, I'm done. But something weird happened in that moment. I feel like in that moment, I earned a seat at the table with influence in his life. Kind of met him where he was at. I cried uncle, I lost, but somehow in that moment, spiritually speaking, I think maybe I won as well. This summer, we're turning everything upside down. Well, actually, Jesus already did that. We're just taking our summer months to recognize these truths out of the Sermon on the Mount, specifically the Beatitudes. Last week, we kicked off with our Worship on the Lawn, this Upside Down Kingdom series. I snapped some pictures with my phone. We talked about that orb that you take a picture through it, it turns everything upside down. To illustrate it, if you were here last week, you saw me embarrass myself by standing on my head. I'm not going to do that again. I haven't seen the chiropractor yet, but I probably should from that little stunt. And I had so much fun after the service was done, as we were standing in line to eat a great meal together, snapping pictures and watching kids look at the picture of themselves turned upside down. That's the visual image of what we're looking at for the next several weeks through the summer months. The upside down kingdom. If you haven't gone there yet, go to your Bibles. Matthew chapter 5, 6, and 7, the greatest sermon ever preached. Jesus preaches it, the Sermon on the Mount, and he begins it with these lines. We have nicknamed them the Beatitudes. Blessed are those who, blessed are you when. And these short lines of prose turn everything on its head. It turns the cultural norms, the cultural values, the cultural standards on their head. It really is the upside down kingdom. King Jesus is inviting you to stand on your head, if you will. Because let's be honest, our culture loves winners, doesn't it? Think about this. We follow influencers who seem to have it all figured out. We admire people with success, with strategy, with swagger. I just watched a few episodes of a new show the other day. The star of this show is the Italian stallion. You remember Rocky? Sylvester Stallone. He is well into his 70s. He's knocking on 80's door. Actually, I looked it up. He's 78 years old. The dude is just ripped for 78 years old. And even in this show, there's a lot of swagger there. You watch him walk away out of the shot of the camera, and he's got like this swagger to him. We kind of respect that in our culture, do we not? If you're like me, maybe you've felt the pressure to look like you have it all together, even when you're falling apart inside. You ever been there? Are you there today? Because Jesus steps into that wrong way of thinking. In the first sentence of the most famous speech, the most famous sermon ever preached, he flips the script. The text, we looked at this last week, sets the stage. He goes up on this mountainside. Actually, I think you could co-locate the Sermon on the Mount and the Sermon on the Plain in the same location. We'll talk about that more in a later week. And he sits down. He doesn't pace the stage. He's not using a microphone. He's not yelling at the crowds, but he begins to teach his followers, the text says. His disciples came to him, and he begins to teach them. If Jesus is your king, this message is for you. Here's the opening line. Verse 3, chapter 5, Matthew, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Wait a minute. What? I mean, if you were going to start a motivational speech, how would you begin it? Blessed are the poor in spirit. You're telling me that the spiritually poor, not the spiritually elite, are the ones who are blessed? That's what he said. That the ones who know they don't have it all together are actually the ones that are closest to God? That's what he said. Welcome to the upside down kingdom. At least a couple of you have reached out to me and talked about the parallel between that language and Stranger Things. Have you seen that show, Stranger Things, the upside down world? I didn't finish that series because it got so weird I couldn't keep track of which was which reality are we in right now. Spiritually speaking, there's an element of that to this. Our confusion is understandable. The Bible does warn against us being empty and impoverished in our souls, and it urges us to seek spiritual riches instead. Like, look at this. Just a few lines later in the same Sermon on the Mount, Matthew chapter 6, verse 21, Jesus says, "For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." There are spiritual riches to be found, and he invites us to seek those. But he says here that there's a kind of spiritual poverty, and it's one that we should also seek. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. What did he mean? Simply, we have to be humble in our spirits. Could I invite you to simply take that word humble and slide it over in place of blessed are the poor in spirit? In American consumerism, we get a little confused between poor and rich. If you slide over humble there, you're going to understand this. So blessed are the poor in spirit. That's a good word. For our context, though, I would say humility. How humble are you as you approach your God? When we come to God, we must recognize our own sin and our own spiritual emptiness and our own spiritual poverty. We're not self-satisfied or proud in our hearts, thinking that we don't really need God. God says he'll bless us when we come with that posture. Look at this, James chapter 4, verse 6. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. I want more grace, and I certainly don't want to be opposed by my God. Pride can take all kinds of forms, but the worst is spiritual pride. Often, the richer we are in things, the poorer we are in our hearts. Have you faced your own need for Christ? Don't let pride or anything else get in the way, but turn to Christ in humility and in faith, and he will bless you and save you. Just so we're not missing the point today, this is what I want you to walk away with this message with. Here's kind of the key takeaway. The kingdom of heaven, it's not for people who, quote, have it all together. It's for people who know they need God. Which of those two camps do you find yourself in this morning? So here's what I want to do with the time that we have remaining. First of all, I want to define the problem. Then I want to ask the question. Then I want to own a couple of truths before we walk away by setting up a challenge for this week. So let's define the problem, shall we? First of all, if you're taking notes, here is the problem. The problem is, quote, having it all together. Can you? We act like we do. How are you today, Stan? I'm fine. You're fine. We're all fine, right? How honest are we with one another about how life is really going? Because it's not always roses and unicorns and fairy tales. Life is hard. Let me start with this. Jesus is not impressed by your Instagram feed. He's not. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with success or excellence, but when we use those things to convince ourselves or others that we don't really need help, we step outside of the blessing that Jesus is describing here at the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount. Actually, there's a passage in Revelation. When I read it, oh, does it give me pause. The Spirit of Jesus speaks a message to the church, first century church of Laodicea. You could probably insert Carmel, Indiana, Hamilton County, Indiana. Look at these words, verse 17, chapter 3 in the book of Revelation. You say I'm rich, I have acquired wealth, and I do not need a thing. I have a white picket fence, and I love to hide behind it. But you do not realize that you're actually wretched, pitiful, poor, blind, and naked. I know how you really feel, which goes beyond what you project to the world around you. Could I give you the context of those verses there in the 3rd chapter of Revelation? The angel of Jesus writes to the church of Laodicea, I know your deeds, that you're neither hot nor cold. I wish you were either one or the other, so because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I'm going to spit you out of my mouth. And then he says, you say I'm rich. I've acquired wealth. I don't need anything. But you don't realize I see you for who you really are. Jesus says you think you're doing just fine, but the truth is you're spiritually bankrupt. And maybe worse, you don't even realize it. Here's the problem. This really is the problem. This is the call to action for an upside-down kingdom. In our world, being needy is seen as a weakness, isn't it? I'm fine, you're fine, we're all fine. But in God's kingdom, admitting your need is where the blessing begins. Are you opening yourself up to the blessings that God wants to pour into your life? Are you honest before God, and are you honest before others? Those of us who grew up in church, I wonder if we've caught this in an unhealthy way. There's a danger here. We can fake spiritual wealth. We can fake it. And I would submit to you that oftentimes we do. We can learn the lingo, the right things to say. I'm fine, you're fine, we're all fine. We can memorize the verses. Oh, I learned a long time ago at VBS that when I memorized the verse, I'd get a gold star. Worse, I would get the praise of the adults who were impressed by my ability to project. We serve on teams. That's a good thing. But we don't do our acts of service to be praised by men, right? That's an act of worship before God. And maybe worse, we smile through the struggle. We don't really let one another in on how we're doing. But Jesus sees through it all. I'll never forget a season of my life years ago. We were foster parenting. We weren't in the adoption mode yet. We had a little baby come into our life that we thought we were going to get to adopt. We lost her to the system. I'll never forget standing in the shower, our house, Bloomington, Indiana, sobbing like a baby. I lost a vision, lost a dream. I lost what I thought was a gift from God, and it broke me to my core. And then that's honest. That's real. I would argue that's healthy. But here's what got unhealthy. I climbed out of the shower, and I shaved and combed my hair, put on clean clothes, and I walked to the office, and I acted like everything was okay, and it was not. My world was falling apart on the inside. But I'm projecting to my office mates, I'm projecting to the church that I'm serving that I'm all right, you're all right, we're all right. That's broken. Let's define the problem. We're doing that. Let's ask the question then before we own a couple of truths so that we can step up to a challenge. Here's the question. What's this mean? What's it mean to be poor in spirit? Can we just put that phrase up there, poor in spirit? Let's unpack the phrase together, shall we? Jesus is speaking the words here probably in Aramaic. They get recorded for us in Matthew in Greek, Koine Greek, the trade language of the first century, similar to English is globally today. The word that is used here is takos, takoi. Kind of sounds like taco. It's not. Better. Here's what it means. Actually, here's what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean somebody who's scraping by, but getting by. Not somebody that's nervous about their bank account and balancing and juggling bills at the end of the month, but still able to live behind that white picket fence and project to the world that I'm okay, you're okay, we're all okay. Here's what it means. It means somebody who's absolutely destitute. It means somebody who is, to put it in the vernacular terms, a beggar. Somebody who has nothing. Dawn and I were in Denver, Colorado a couple of weeks ago, and one of the routes that we were taking each day took us underneath an overpass just south of downtown Denver. There was a homeless camp right there. And I kept recognizing the faces of some of the folks that had, those cardboard signs. They're asking. And I don't know, maybe it was God's Spirit speaking to me, whispering to me, but in that moment I was just thinking, what kind of humility does it take to ask? I don't know if I have that level of humility, to be quite honest with you. I don't know if I have that humility to stand there with that sign and make that ask. That has to be humbling. So what does it mean to be spiritually poor? Well, spiritually poor means you recognize your total dependence upon God. It's approaching Jesus, King Jesus, with humility as a beggar. You come to him not with your resume, with your emptiness. There's this passage in the Old Testament, old school, after King David is busted in his sin. He sins with Bathsheba. Perhaps you remember this story. Psalm 51, this is a picture of this kind of humility. My sacrifice, O God, is a broken spirit, a broken and a contrite heart. You, O God, will not despise. Isaiah chapter 66, verse 2, I love this language. These are the ones I look at, God says, with favor. Those who are humble and contrite in spirit and who tremble at my word. They come before me not with a spiritual resume, but with brokenness, because here's the truth. God is not looking for perfect. He's not looking for I'm okay, you're okay, we're all okay. He's not looking for perfection. Here's what he's looking for. Honest. He's looking for real. He's looking for people who come to him with nothing but open hands. There was a season in my life, not too long ago actually, if I'm just being real honest with you, I was running on empty. I was preaching, still preaching, I was still leading, I was still showing up, but inside I was feeling kind of dry. Maybe some of you can relate to that. Maybe some of you are feeling that way even right now as I'm talking. I had drifted into this place where I was depending on my own preparation and my past experiences with God, but I wasn't actually depending on God today, right now, in this moment. Can you relate to that? By the way, the storms of life were blowing. We had some circumstances going on in our family dynamic. It wasn't, can I say it this way? It wasn't exactly how we had written the script. And we were feeling dry. I was feeling dry, broken, hurting. One morning I'm sitting alone with my Bible and I just broke. And I said something, I'm ashamed to admit this to you, but I said something that I probably hadn't said for a while. God, I don't have what it takes today. Oh yeah, I need you. I don't have what it takes to do this thing by my own power. I need you. You know what happened? Yeah, you know what happened. He showed up. Actually, he was there all along. I just wasn't recognizing his proximity. He didn't show up with fireworks, but he showed up with peace. He showed up with clarity and with the reminder, hey, Stan, hey, dummy. That's my words, not his. That's exactly where I wanted you to be all along. Welcome to the space that I've designed you for. All right, we've defined the problem. We've asked the question. Now let's own a couple of truths, shall we? Here's one. Spiritual poverty unlocks the kingdom. Again, this is the upside down kingdom. You can't put the rules that you learned in culture on how to live right in Jesus, King Jesus' kingdom. Spiritual poverty unlocks the kingdom. This is why, in my opinion, Jesus starts the Beatitudes here, because check this out. Until we admit that we need him, we'll never receive what he's offering. Until we admit, listen, I'm broken, I need you, we miss out on the blessing. In Luke chapter 18, Jesus is telling a story to illustrate this truth. It's right there in Scripture in black and white, in red and white when he's talking. Like for here in verse 9, he says this, to some who were confident of their own righteousness, I'm okay, you're okay, we're okay, and looked down on everyone else, Jesus told this parable. Here's a story. Two men went up to the temple to pray. One a Pharisee, everybody knew who that person was. They pictured him in their mind's eye as soon as Jesus said the word. And the other a tax collector. They knew what he looked like as well. And then if you keep reading, the Pharisee starts to list off his accomplishments, his spiritual resume. He talks about fasting. Oh man, we can take a spiritual discipline and we can turn it into something it's not designed to be. Aren't you proud of me, God? Look how I'm doing this for you. He's talking about tithing. The Pharisees were famous. Jesus talks about this somewhere else. You guys have taken this to an nth degree. You're tithing off of your spice cabinet, which on one hand, that's pretty cool that you don't want to cheat God. But on the other hand, seriously? You've taken this relationship and turned it into a religion, a ritual. You're missing the heart of the gospel. And then the Pharisee, he does the unforgivable, I think. He starts thanking God that he's not like those people, probably pointing at the tax collector. Meanwhile, the tax collector stands at a distance. If you read through that story, he beats his chest. This is an act of surrender, a posture of humility. And he says, God, have mercy on me. I'm a sinner. And Jesus says, look at verse 14, I tell you that this man, the tax collector, rather than the other, the righteous, self-righteous Pharisee, went home justified before God. Why? Because one man came with his spiritual resume, the other one came with his need. Parents, you get this. If you've got two kids, and one of them is a kiss-up, you know what I'm talking about? Look at me. Mom, I did the dishes. Aren't you proud of me? Mom, I cleaned my room. Isn't that awesome? Mom, look at my straight A's. I'm incredible, right? And then you've got this other kid, and he trips over the dog bowl, and he bounces off of the wall, and he has a gash on his forehead where he smashed his face and a skinned up knee and an elbow, and he comes running to you and says, Mom, I need you to kiss the boo-boos away. I need you. I mean, seriously, where is your heart drawn in that moment? The kiss up or the kid that needs you? We're children of the Creator God. How do you approach him in your daily life? God in that story blessed the one who was poor in spirit. This is why several years ago, about 5 years ago, a whole bunch of us did some good work on our mission statement here at Venture Christian Church. That we want to be real people. Real people, not putting on airs. I'm okay, you're okay, we're all okay. But we're a real people in community, loving courageously, sharing generously, speaking truthfully. We break through some of those facades that culture would put on us, and we would say, no, we're citizens of the upside down kingdom. We want to do this differently. Let's be real with one another. Jesus says that that's the person who walks away right with God, because spiritual poverty unlocks the kingdom. We've defined the problem, asked the question. We're owning a couple of truths like this one. Radical dependence is the superpower. If you're looking for what is this thing, the superpower in God's kingdom, well, it's radical dependence. Let me say something that might sound upside down to you. Radical dependence on God is your greatest strength. Do you believe that? Are you living that way? Is that truth evidenced by how you live? When people around you say what your greatest strength is it your ability to get things done? Is it your business prowess? Is it your winning personality? Is it your hard work ethic? Here's the thing. The very thing that the world says is weakness is what heaven calls a superpower. The Apostle Paul learned this the hard way. After pleading with God to remove his weakness, God responds. I love this. Look at this. 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9. He says, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect. I don't like this word. In weakness. Then Paul says something wild. He says, okay, then I'm jumping into the deep end. I want it all, God. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. In other words, if I could paraphrase, Paul says it this way. I'm done pretending that I'm strong. I'm done faking it. Because when I admit that I am weak, that's when God's power shows up. And I want to give plenty of room for his power to show up. That's the power of spiritual poverty. You don't have to fake being okay. I'm okay, you're okay, we're all okay. It's not healthy. By the way, it's a form of lying. It's lying by omission, right? You don't have to prove your worth. You just have to come empty. Are you feeling a bit empty today? Are you looking for a practical action step? Let me give you one that actually, it's a tool that our church launches today. You can get in on the ground floor. I'm going to put up a QR code. We've been doing these reading plans, and it's been so fun to see the engagement that's happening in the app, in these reading plans, as we read through Scripture and process Scripture together as a community. Well, today we're launching a brand new one. This is through the Pauline epistles. Take your phone out if you'd like. Snap a picture, or you don't even have to take the picture. Just hover over that. You'll get a QR. It'll give you a link that'll pop up. You could sign up to be a part of that today and study the Pauline epistles for the next 60 days in the context of community. Let me hit you with the challenge. We've defined the problem. We've asked the question. We've owned a couple of truths. Here's the challenge. This week, would you practice dependence? Put this into practice. Let's get real practical. Let me ask you the question, where? Where do you need God right now? Not in theory, I'm talking right now. Is it a decision that you're facing? Is it a relationship that's unraveling? Is it an addiction that keeps circling back around? Maybe it's an ache that hasn't healed. Here's the challenge this week. Name it. Name that thing that just came to mind. Confess it. Take it to King Jesus, and then invite him into it. By the way, he already knows. Like the child that just bumped its knee, he hears your crying. He knows that you're not okay. Take it to him. Maybe start your day by praying something like this: God, I don't have what it takes today, but I know that you do. I'm poor in spirit, and today I choose to depend on you. That's how the kingdom shows up in your life. Not when we're strong. When we're surrendered. Are you? Are you surrendered? Can I invite you today to take a step deeper into King Jesus's upside down kingdom? For some of you, maybe today is the first time that you're realizing, I can't do this all on my own. Maybe you thought, oh, this is so prevalent. Maybe you thought that God wanted you to clean up your life first, that he was looking for perfect people. But Jesus didn't say, blessed are the put together. Behind that white picket fence, he knows there's dysfunction. This is what he did say. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. This is heaven that I want to offer to you, he says. Step into it and receive it. If you've got nothing to offer, good. If you feel like a spiritual beggar, perfect. You're exactly the kind of person that Jesus is talking about. He's not waiting for you to impress him. He's waiting for you to invite him in. And the moment you say, I need Jesus, that's the moment the kingdom begins in you. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Spiritual poverty isn't a flaw. It's not a curse. It's the beginning of freedom. It's actually your superpower. When you know that you don't have what it takes, when you run to the one who does, you're right where Jesus wants you to be. You came in today, there were some communion elements sitting on your seat. Would you grab those and pull them out right now? I want to set up a time for you to do some business with King Jesus. When you're ready, you take the communion on your own. The night that Jesus is betrayed, the night before the cross, there's a whole discourse of teaching in your New Testament. One of the things that Jesus told his disciples that night in that upper room in John chapter 15, I love this language, I'm the vine, you're the branches. He who, I love this old-timey word, he who abides in me and I in him bears much fruit. For without me, you can't do anything. Are you recognizing your need for King Jesus? Are you being honest with him? Maybe today you've never stepped into that relationship with King Jesus. I'd invite you to pray a prayer here in a moment that goes something like this. Jesus, I've tried to do life on my own, but I need you. I admit that I'm spiritually empty and I want what only you can give. I believe you died for me. I believe you rose again, and today I invite you to be king of my life. I can't do this on my own, so I give you everything. Thanks for welcoming somebody like me into your kingdom. Maybe you're here today and you've been posturing as if you have it all together. Let me get you started in your prayer time with King Jesus as well. Jesus, I admit it. I need you. I confess the places where I've tried to live in my own strength and I don't see it working. So I lay down my pride. I lay down my image. I lay down my self-reliance. I am poor in spirit. I thank you that your kingdom belongs to people like me. Would you fill the empty places in my heart? Would you show up in my weaknesses? Would you teach me today to live this week in radical dependence on you? I've got you started. You do business with him. And when you're ready, you take the communion yourself.